Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Crazy D's Equipment on a cold, bitter, nasty day. If you take a look outside, the weather is terrible. It is here in Kansas. I know for a lot of you guys got hit by this crazy winter storm. Some of you got hit worse than others. But today is not a day, weather-wise, to be out in the shop or to be out in the middle of the lot doing. So I'm going to share some stories of tractors that we saved from the scrap man.
All right.
So the first tractor I want to talk about is a leader that I found out by Emporia, Kansas. It was sitting down in a ravine. They sold the property and everything around the property, and the tractor was a bunch of. We were called in to clean up a bunch of scrap, and the tractor was sitting down there in the ravine. And I knew right there that it was better than scrap. So I talked to the person and told them that one tractor I would like to, that tractor, I think it was about the only tractor, but that tractor I would pay extra for him. I would give him a little bit more than scrap value for it. And we bought that tractor. I brought it home and I unloaded it, and I had intentions the whole time of restoring that tractor, getting it running, restoring the tractor, getting it running. And it was in really bad shape. I have believed that it was probably underwater a couple times, especially being down in that ravine, or at least pretty close to being underwater a couple times. And it ended up that I had a guy come by and want to buy it, and I sold it to him because he collected oddball tractors, and it sat for 4 years, and he didn't come pick it up. And I had another friend of mine I think he's from out of the Manhattan area, and he asked me if that was for sale. And I said, well, it's been 4 years since the guy supposedly bought the tractor. He paid for it, but it's set for 4 years. I haven't been able to get a hold of him. There's no excuse for it because he only lives about 30 miles down the road of not picking the tractor up and taking it back to his place. I said, I'm going to go ahead and resell it. And he bought it, and then I had to inform the fellow that I no longer had the tractor, that I got rid of it, that he waited too long, that I had to clean up some stuff. And then my buddy who bought it from the Lawrence area, he got that thing completely restored, and I don't have enough pictures. I wish I had more pictures of it. But it is absolute beautiful running, not beautiful little tractor. So it was saved, and it is now restored, and instead of going to scrap. So the next tractor I want to talk about is an Oliver 99 that I got my hands on. I had gone down by, it's kind of close to El Dorado, Kansas, and there was a farmstead down there that we came into back in the old days when we were doing the salvage work to do some cleanup. The gentleman had passed away, and he wanted to, the family wanted to clean up the farmstead, and I said, well, we would come in and we'd help them get it set up. We weren't doing salvage work for them at the time. We were doing, they were setting up for a farm sale. And they had a whole bunch of, old tractors and trucks and stuff. And they were like, we're not going to put that on the auction. We don't want the junkers to show up. We don't want the junkers on the place. She said, I think I'm just going to have somebody haul that stuff off before the auction. And I was like, well, okay. So there's 277 Olivers and this Oliver 99. And then there was a 51 Chevy grain truck. And I was like, well, that stuff's not scrap. She's like, well, yeah, but it won't sell for anything on the auction, and they're not runners, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it. And I said, we'll buy it. We'll buy those three things. So we bought the grain truck, which was very interesting. We towed it home. It had a tow hitch. Christopher helped me tow it home. It was quite the adventure. But we loaded up the 277s and the 99. The 277s I sold to a gentleman, and they are now in France, because they are very rare over there to find Olivers that are actually still running their Oliver motors. A lot of those were brought over there on the Lin lease program, but Oliver didn't stay and back it. So a lot of those Oliver tractors that were sold ended up with Mercedes engines in them, or ended up with other manufacturer engines in them. So to have an Oliver over there with the original 6-cylinder Oliver motor in it is very rare. And so he had bought them and took them to France. And then I had the Oliver 99, and Junior Mint really wanted to keep that tractor really, really bad. And he gave me all kinds of grief about getting rid of the tractor. And I finally had a gentleman a young kid out of Oklahoma area contacted me, wanted to know if I had anything for an FFA restoration project. And I said, well, I have this Oliver 99. It is half tore down, most of the parts, and there are extra parts on pallets. If you want, I'll crack you a deal on this thing, and you can go to work, and this would be a great restoration, and they're kind of odd, and they make good pulling tractors. So the kid drove up from Oklahoma, and he looked over the tractor, and he was very, very excited to purchase the tractor. And the tractor ended up going down to Oklahoma. Now, I've never heard if he finished the restoration. I would always wanted to know if he got that tractor restored and how he did with it as a FFA project. But I'm hoping he did well, and I hope the tractor got restored and everything is right. But I mean, it did not ended up scrap, and that was my main goal. So the next tractor we're going to talk about is a Case 800. I had a gentleman from down by Kingman contact me, said, hey, they're cleaning up a hedgerow. They got a junker out. He is hauling all the equipment out of the hedgerow. There's a tractor. He heard I was interested in Case tractors. Thought maybe I might be interested in this one. Maybe not. He wasn't for sure. I said, well, I'll make the trip. And it's about an hour and a half drive to Kingman, Kansas from where I'm at. And so I made the drive down, and I got lost 3 times trying to find the place because he gave me the worst directions ever. But finally I found the place. And he said, here, come with me. And we got in his truck, and we drove out to the middle of nowhere. In this hedgerow, there was a crud load of old machinery and stuff. And there's one Case 800 tractor just shoved in a row, and it had been there forever. It was sunk up to the middle of the wheels because they have blow sand or sandy soil out there, and it is sunk up to the middle of the wheels. The belly was almost touching the ground. I mean, you couldn't put your hand in between the bottom of the pan and the ground. I think the rear end was sitting on the ground and stuff. And finally we got pulled around, and I said, yeah, that'll work. And we went back to the house. We made a deal. I went back to the house. I got the truck and trailer. We pulled out there, and I thought, well, I'm just going to winch this up there. And I hooked onto it with the winch, and I pulled the tractor far. I couldn't pull it out of the ground. The winch would just... And I tried double and triple and quadruple lining it and everything, and I could not get the tractor pulled up out of the ground. So they came over with this Ford tractor, and we pulled it out of there with the Ford tractor, and then I pulled it up there with the winch. And oh my God, that tractor was in such sad shape. Sad shape. It had been beat up so bad. You know, like the old saying, rode hard and put away wet. Oh my God, this thing had just been so poorly treated. And so I brought it home and I unloaded it, and it sat for a year or so, and then finally I decided it was a parts tractor. I didn't think it was a restoration tractor. So I ended up parting it all the way down completely, and it ended up, going out there and saving a whole bunch of tractors. So that is always a good thing. The last one I want to talk about was a heck of an adventure. I had another gentleman contact me, said, "Hey, we're getting ready to clean up Dad's place. I heard you're into case tractors. He has a tractor there, but I'm pretty sure it's scrap. It's only got 3 wheels. Dad broke the axle years ago on it and stuff." And I said, "Well, what kind of tractor is it?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, "I think it's like a 730 or a 600 or something like that." And I said, "Okay, well, it'd be really cool if it was a 600. I'm thinking a 3-wheeled 600. That's going to be cakewalk to get up on the trailer. I'd know exactly how I want to go about that." And then I got there, and it is a 900 or a 930 long nose. It is weighted to the T, weighted like you wouldn't believe on one side. That's why they broke the axle on the tractor, is it was overweighted. So me and Doc sat there for a while, and we looked at it, and we took some measurements and stuff, and I said, "Okay, we'll be back. We'll be back next weekend to pick the tractor up." We made a deal. I paid for the tractor. I did all that stuff. And we went home, and me and Doc went, and we scratched our heads and scratched our heads and scratched our heads on how to come up with that. And I was just walking around the farm, and Grandpa had at one point hauled off a whole bunch of radio towers and a whole bunch of cleaned up a manufacturing and cleaned up a bunch of stuff from an trailer house manufacturer, and there were these I-beams that, well, they're kind of triangle beams is what they were, that were in the ceiling of the factory that they used to run their winches and stuff along. But he had bought them in the ideal to make light towers out of for the farm, so where you put your yard light up, on that metal tower. So I was measuring that, and it happened to be just as high from the ground to the top as the tractor set. And I figured we could take it from there, slide that wheel along that till we got to the trailer. At the trailer, I put a block underneath it, and I greased the trailer so the block would slide along the trailer. And then when we got past the angle of the dovetail, I lifted the tractor up and laid it back on top of that beam, and then slid it along the beam until I got the tractor to where we wanted to sit. Then he brought his tractor over, and he loaded the tires and the weight from that side that was broke off, and that's how we loaded that tractor. It was quite the adventure, and I was so proud of myself for figuring out how to do it. I was like, "I'm the man. I'm an engineer." But so I went to work, and I took that tractor home. 99% of that tractor, the front half of that tractor, ended up in Wisconsin with my buddy Greg. He bought the motor, I bought the tin work, I think he bought the radiator, he bought the I'm trying to think of everything he bought on that. I think he pretty much bought everything but the rear end on that tractor. And then I sat on that rear end for a while, and I had a guy come, and he bought all the bowl gears and stuff out of it because he was building something that he needed those, and I just ended up with just the casing of the rear end, and I think I did finally give up and haul that into scrap because I could not figure anybody that was going to need that ever. So, but anyways, so guys, that kind of gives you some stories of some tractors that we have saved over time. I hope you're staying warm. I hope you're not out in the weather today or have to go out in the weather today. I know some of you that farms got livestock to take care of, and you're going to have to go out and play in this eventually. But anyways, guys, thank you for coming in. Thank you for watching. Stay warm, and we will see you next week.